Hi everyone, Brad here, bringing you something a little different this week. Lisa and I are still recovering from our Star Wars celebration Awesome Con 1-2 Punch. Those were two really incredible events, and it was great to meet up with so many of you at those conventions, but it did push our calendar back a bit. We are hard at work right now putting our notes together for our Angela and Sarah couples session, covering Angela, Asgard's assassin from Marvel Comics. And man, I'm having so much fun with it. And because this is an episode that has been building for so long and only getting longer and longer and longer, and I am sorry for that, we are sorry for that, but we do not want to mess it up. We want to take our care with it. So we're not rushing to get that episode out. And I'm sorry it's not out yet, but this is the joy of having a very indie comic book podcast. But if you're a patron, you haven't missed this at all because we've been cranking out our Sandman issue by issue read through, what we call the Sleepwalking with Sandman series, on our Patreon feed. And Lisa and I were talking about this the other day after we wrapped up our conversation on Sandman 34. Those are some of our wildest and most entertaining conversations. We call it sweatpants mode. It's where we get really wild, loosey-goosey with the chit-chat. It really does feel like you're hanging out with us in the love nest in a way that these regular comic book couples counseling episodes don't, because, we've got our game face on with our sessions. Like, these notes, like, I wish we were those podcasts that just like flipped a switch, hit record, and started chit-chatting about whatever comics news. That's not what we do here. We get lost in the process of putting these episodes together, which is why, again, we don't have our Angela and Sarah episode out, because we put like 12, 13, 20 hours of pre-game into those episodes before we ever hit record. But with these Sleepwalking with Sandman episodes, yeah, we just flip a switch and we go. And, sometimes we have a little alcoholic beverage with us. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes we're just high on the content. And this episode that we are previewing for you here, it covers Sandman issue 17. This was done several months back, and it was actually done right after Christmas, right after Lisa's birthday. So the beginning of this episode, you're going to hear Lisa and I talking about how that week went, if Lisa had a satisfying birthday. That's what you're about to hear before we get into the Sandman chatter. It goes on for about 15 minutes, so if you want to skip ahead, feel free to do so. I will not be offended, although I think it's also some of our cutest convo. I just re-listened to it, and I'm biased, but I love it so much. And then we get into the comments from our patrons. These folks, They don't just go like, oh, good job. Oh, you missed this thing. No, they bring their A game. They make these episodes as good as they are. We get essays, not comments from our listeners, and we read through those, and they help us contextualize what we're experiencing as first-time readers of Sandman. It can be a little hard, but we allow our listeners to be the experts. It's a vulnerable experience, but Lisa and I do not know what's going on with Sandman. We're trying to figure out, and it's like by issue 17, we're starting to see Morpheus's arc, his evolution as a character, and it's super exciting, but we still don't get what the Endless are, so we're fumbling around. Now, where we are on the Patreon feed currently is with Sandman issue 34, which is the third part of A Game of You, and now I'm a full-blown Sandman obsessive. It pains me that we are doing these issues week to week. I would love to just blitz through some trades, but that would also spoil the fun of what we're doing with our Sleepwalking Through Sandman series. And I like going back in time, doing a little Christmas in June. Dream Country is such a fantastic arc. It's one of my favorite arcs. This issue is one of my favorite issues. I think the conversation it creates between Lisa and I is one of the best conversations that we've had with these Sleepwalking Through Sandman issues, and I hope you will enjoy it too. With the Sandman trailer recently dropping via Netflix's Geeked Week, I I am in awe of how they are going to adapt these stories. And I'm very curious, and I love the excitement around Sandman right now. And I hope you guys are just as excited as we are. And if you like what you listen to here, please consider joining up with the Comic Book Couples Counseling Patreon feed. You can enter at the Smitten Kitten level. That is $1 a month or $12 a year. You can buy an annual pass to Comic Book Couples Counseling's Patreon. Very, very little amount of money. You can't even go to the movies for that kind of cash these days, and we're giving you hours of content. There's 37 Sandman episodes on the feed, and we've only covered 34 issues. There's some two-parters there, friends. Not to mention our Comically Real episodes, where we dive into movies like The Rocketeer and the Punisher trilogy. Yes, the Punisher trilogy. Plus our Creator Cranny episodes. We recently did an interview with Chris Condon, the author of That Texas Blood, and as well as like Christian Ward of Blood-Stained Teeth and Aquaman Andromeda fame. Those chats are wonderful. Highly recommend giving those a listen too. And guess what? I've unlocked those conversations so you can go check those out without paying $1 a month. It's okay. Go check them out. Give me some comments on those episodes. I would love to read them. But we also don't expect everyone to sign up for our Patreon. We understand that not everyone can afford to do so, or not everyone has the desire to do so. That's A-okay. We hope you enjoy this preview. Let us know on Twitter or on our Facebook page. Links in the show notes at CBCC Podcast. Lisa's at Sidewalk Siren on Twitter and Instagram. I'm at Mouthdork on Twitter and Instagram. Let's hang out online. Let's chat about Sandman. And of course, happy holidays!
Bum bum bottom 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 bum bum doobie doobie da 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 doobie doobie da 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 doobie doobie da 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 bottom bum bum doobie doobie da 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 doobie doobie da 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 doobie doobie da 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 bottom bottom bum bum bottom ba da 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 ba da
Hello, friends. What's up, lovebirds? It's Brad and Lisa.
Hello.
Post-Christmas, post-Lisa birthday.
We made it, you guys.
We made it.
The holidays are almost over. There's still New Year's.
There's still New Year's.
But we had a great time. Lots of laughs.
We've got a few days left to 2021. I'm sure we're going to talk a little bit about it on our main episode for the week, which we're going to record hopefully in the next 2 days.
Hopefully.
3 days.
Yeah.
Get it out before 2021 is over. But this has been such an incredibly wonderful and weird year.
Yeah.
And it's been a humbling year in a lot of ways. But just like sticking to the holidays, it was a good holiday. Good holiday?
It was a good holiday. We laughed. We cried. We exchanged gifts.
Yeah.
We thanked each other.
Lisa, not like, not to put you on the spot, but did you have any particular gift from Christmas, not your birthday,
not my birthday,
that was a highlight?
Well, from you, I got that big 2-volume book by Paul McCartney with the alphabetized.
Yeah, Paul McCartney, the lyrics.
Yeah, it's where he takes a bunch of his songs and he talks about what was happening around the time of their inception and what ideas were going into those songs. I think that's really cool. I'm gonna leaf through that.
Yeah, well, that was a gift for you, absolutely. Also, a little bit of a gift for me.
It's been a very Beatles December.
Yeah. Ever since we watched Get Back, which I'm sure we've already mentioned on this podcast at some point, we've both been in a Beatle mania and loving it. And so I knew Lisa for Christmas had gotten me an LP, a 4 LP set, an import from Japan featuring 4 lengthy interviews with each Beatle.
Yeah, we found it at Brad was there when I found it. We found it at Second and Charles, and they had it in a display case. And so I was just like, is that the kind of thing a guy would want around Christmas time? And then he was like, yes.
Yeah, I would like that. And so knowing that you were giving me that import, I thought, oh, I could pair something cool with that. And so that they both kind of become like a Brad and Lisa gift.
That's so fun. We did give each other a few surprises. I did give you that Shining shirt. You weren't expecting that?
Yeah, and I wore it all day yesterday.
It looks very handsome.
It's the carpet pattern from the Overlook Hotel. Looks very good on my chest.
And then John and Kenzie, that's my brother and his wife, gave us like one of those like box mysteries where you just like open the box and there's like a little note that's like a crime has happened and you've got to solve it. And it was baking based.
Yeah.
It was called Baker's Dozen. And the mystery was all of the judges of the show Baker's Dozen had deadly allergies, and someone had smashed all of the set's EpiPens and ripped up all of the recipes to cover up that one of them was planning to murder one of the judges by killing him with his terrible allergies, or they.
Yeah, and so don't spoil it.
You might be doing it. Maybe you guys got a Baker's Dozen.
We played it last night. I was awake for the first 2.5 hours of playing Baker's Dozen.
Yeah, we started it at like 8:30, which was a mistake.
And then I fell asleep, and then I woke, and then I crawled to bed, and then I woke up around 2 o'clock in the morning to Lisa crawling back into bed because she solved the murder mystery without me.
I couldn't stop. I had to stop it before the taping of the finale.
I feel like the last thing I said to you before crawling into bed was, hey, we can continue this in the morning. And you did continue it through the morning without me.
Well, like at the bottom, so once we had puzzled together all of the ripped up recipes, the bottom had like little, like they were allowed to put in code at the bottom of their recipes substitution notes.
Yeah.
And so I just once I start something like that, like I just cannot stop.
Yeah, so that was a lot of fun.
So Brad woke up to be going like, I solved the crime.
Well, like the weird thing about that game is that once you solve it, you're done with the game. You might as well throw it in the garbage.
Yeah, I mean, when we first started solving it, like I was trying to keep it like clean so that we could like perhaps pass it on, but it was a bunch of sealed envelopes was the most of the like mystery part.
Yeah.
And like once we had unsealed the envelopes, and then I was like, well, it's annoying to have all of these like recipes here, but they're all in pieces. So I taped the recipes together, and I was like, well, once I've taped the recipes together, like fuck it.
Well, so yes, we would recommend that if you want. I'm guessing 5 hours of entertainment?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're slow like me, I'm bad at puzzles.
Yeah,
I'm bad at word puzzles. But like the great thing is, like once I had solved it, like they do have like a little like hints page, and so I got to go back onto the hints page and then see all of the other hints that I missed.
Oh yeah.
So there were other like little clever things that we had figured out by other means.
Yeah.
But there were also other hidden messages to verify those hunches that we had, which I think
certainly
was so fun.
The best gift we've ever been given by John and Kenzie.
Yeah, they nailed it. It was so fun.
Yeah. Your mom also made us a really incredible quilt.
Yeah, it's beautiful. She had clearly picked out the fabric with us in mind. It's a bunch of animals that are wearing glasses. Perfectly on brand. I have 4 siblings, so this year 2 of us got 2 of the couples got quilts,
yeah.
And then the other half will get quilts next Christmas.
In the future.
Yeah.
The people who show up on Christmas Day take priority.
That's right. So John and Kenzie didn't get a quilt.
So who got the quilt?
Joe and Monica. I don't know. I wasn't paying attention. All I hear is what applies to me.
I'm going to stick with my sentiment of if you want a quilt, come on Christmas Day.
Yeah, that's true.
And then Lisa got me the shirt, and she got me the import, and you also got me a copy of Once Upon a Time in China, the Criterion box set. Haven't cracked into that yet. Super excited. I was also given a glorious gift. We were given a glorious gift from Barnes & Noble.
Oh, yeah.
The day after Christmas, Boxing Day, they had their 48-hour sale, all hardcovers 50% off, which is an absolutely ridiculous sale to do.
So we got a big fat stack of comics.
Yeah, we went hunting for comics, and we bought a lot of comic books from Barnes & Noble. I hope that's not a sign that things are bad for Barnes & Noble, because again, that's a really absurd sale.
That is the place where Brett and I met and fell in love.
That's right. My favorite thing about that, though, was sharing that sale online and then having people like Kelly Sue DeConnick, Brian Michael Bendis, Tom King retweet it. And then all the people who saw that tweet then tweet at us the fat stacks that they were buying. Yeah,
it became a community, an online community experience that kind of started with comic book couples counseling, which feels really great.
Yeah, it ended up having 175,000 impressions on that tweet. And, you know, like Lisa said, we met at Barnes & Noble. So Barnes & Noble has this very special place in our heart. And, you know, what started out as those evil corporate people who pushed out all the mom and pop shops have now discovered that they are one of those mom and pop shops being pushed out by Amazon and Walmart and online shopping. And having now worked 11 years at Barnes & Noble, I'm all about supporting that company.
Yeah.
I think they should have done a better job of getting that 50% off sale out there into the world.
But we did our part.
No signage on the wall when I walked in.
Yeah.
But anyway, and then, of course, supporting comics and getting to see people getting the comics that they've always wanted for a great deal. And, you know, the way we used that sale was there are items that we've been looking at for a long time and thinking about, but going like, gosh, you know, that's a $50 book, and we can't really like that. It seems ridiculous to buy that $50 book, and then now it's a $25 book,
which is like paying us to have the book,
right? So what do we end up doing? We end up buying like a couple $25 hardbacks,
but we love it, and it was a fun way to celebrate the holidays, just the two of us.
And then it was your birthday, Lisa.
It's my birthday.
So I asked you your favorite Christmas gifts. What was your favorite birthday gift?
Well, definitely the thing I'm most excited to just break into and bust into is my set of Queer Eye Legos.
Yeah.
I saw those at Target and I was like, Brad, that would be an amazing birthday gift or Christmas gift for somebody.
And I was like, you know, maybe you'll get them, maybe you won't.
I love that Queer Eye is big enough to have a set of Legos. And I'm excited to finally have more representation of my hero, Jonathan Van Ness, in my home. They're so special to me.
Yeah.
So that's really wonderful.
Yeah.
And it's a fun project. I like doing Legos. I actually got 2 Lego sets from you because for Christmas you gave me the Endgame Thor apartment Lego set. My favorite Lego sets are the ones that look like little doll houses.
Yep.
Because that's the way I play Legos. John would, you know, make cars and planes, and I'm sorry that this is so gender normative, but it is the truth. And I would then build little houses and couches for the little. I would play house with them.
Yeah, and so these are like 2 dioramas.
Yeah, I love dioramas. I love them. So that's so fun. And then I loved I'm almost embarrassed how much I love getting words of affirmation on my birthday from all of the wonderful people on Twitter. Like, it really does, like, it's sick. It really does fill my love tank so much. Like, it's, like, vulnerable for me to say, but, like, just, like, somebody going, like, hey, you know, what you're doing is really great, and the person whom you're trying to be on the internet is really working. We see it. We see what you're doing. And just getting that affirmation from so many people I love, people I admire, people I've never met.
Nearly every one of our patrons wished you a happy birthday.
And it was just so special, and I appreciate it so much. Because of words of affirmation and me realizing the relationship I have with them, like I have a special bond with Cookie Monster now,
right?
Where it's just like there is something in my life that when I get it, it defines me. Yeah. Words of affirmation and my love of words of affirmation like I am a words of affirmation monster. And every time I get words of affirmation, it's a pleasant surprise that I like relish and enjoy.
Every time Lisa
through.
checked her phone yesterday, she was beaming.
I was
And
smiling.
So I would also thank everybody who sent Lisa some words of affirmation.
Well, you're the one who did the initial tweet to make the words of affirmation happen. Oh, it is also now Jamie's birthday.
That's right.
So she deserves some words of affirmation. We love her so much. She's one of our, beautiful comic book friends that we made on the internet, and it blows my mind that we've never met in person now
and
at
just
this point.
started writing for Girls Talk Comics, wrote an exceptional review for the
Deadly
Deadliest
Bouquet.
Yeah, so good.
Deadliest Bouquet.
That's right.
So good. So insightful.
Yeah, and I'm excited for the future of all those reviews that
Me
Jamie's
too.
going to put out there into the world. So that's super exciting.
Yes.
So a solid week we've had. I hope you have all enjoyed your past week as well.
Got some good gifties.
I hope that you've all gotten our Patreon holiday cards. If you haven't, it's because you didn't get to me in time, but a lot of you have gotten to me in time, so we're going back to the post office to mail more holiday cards this week. And so if you're
the holidays don't end until January 1st.
They don't. But if you're listening to this and we have not communicated in any way, because there are a few of you still out there that have not answered your Patreon message. I know Patreon is a weird messaging system, but it's how we communicate. So if you have not checked your inbox, please do so. I have sent you an email, a note, asking for confirmation on your address. We want to get those cards out to each and every one of you.
Unless you don't want us to know where you live, which
And that's
is fair.
fine. No, and some people said like they didn't want it, and that's totally cool. But what's even way cooler are all the places across this country, across Canada, across England that we have sent cards. So we have shipped overseas. If you're overseas and you're like, oh, Brad and Lisa, they don't want to send me a card. Yes, we do. We do. So yeah. Thank you all. Okay, I think it's time to get into the meat of this episode.
I'm excited about this issue. I really enjoyed it.
Spoilers, Lisa. I really enjoyed this issue as well.
It might be one of my faves.
It might be my favorite episode. That's hard to say. My favorite issue, it could be.
It's
and
really good.
By the end of this conversation, it might very well definitely be. But before we can even get into this particular issue, we need to go back to last week's issue, number 16, and address some comments. We got a few here.
Excellent.
Up first, Alexander Ostroff says...
Hello.
And he has some corrections.
Ooh.
And well, maybe not even corrections, but some clarifications.
I love it.
So this is what Alexander has to say. Desire hasn't been siring the vortex the entire time. Unity herself says that she was originally destined to be the vortex, but it was passed down to Rose because of Dream's imprisonment, etc. What Desire did by assaulting and impregnating Unity was take advantage of Dream's imprisonment to create a situation where the new vortex, Rose, was Desire's granddaughter and thus related to Dream.
Right.
This created a situation where, had Unity not saved the day, Dream would be forced to spill family blood, which is against the rules, in order to destroy the vortex, save the world. If Desire had sired previous vortexes, Dream would have already unwittingly spilled family blood.
That makes sense.
In the past and suffered whatever consequences Desire is trying to bring about.
That makes total sense. Oh,
Yeah.
Thank you for putting that together for us. Jeez.
Also worth thinking about how thematically the crystal hearts from this issue in Desire's sigil and that Rose gives to Unity link to the glass/crystal heart that the youth goes looking for in the Doll's House prologue before getting to hear the story of Nada and Desire's admission earlier in this arc of having somehow meddled to cause the Nada situation.
Okay, yeah, because we had forgotten that detail.
Yeah. Alexander finishes with, in terms of the story arcs and your sense that this one felt more like Rose's story than Morpheus' story, Gaiman has said in the past that he had tried to alternate between masculine and feminine story arcs, acknowledging the binary and kind of essentialist limits of that type of thinking. The structure of the series sort of alternates major arcs focused on Morpheus with major arcs focused on characters with Morpheus playing a more supporting role. From here on out, in between these major arcs, Gaiman tends to insert 3 to 4 issues of one-offs that explore nooks and crannies and short stories of the world where he tested out new art teams who would then take over future major arcs.
Smart.
You're about to dive into the first of these series of short stories for the next few issues, and then another big arc, then a few short stories, then a big arc, etc. In the trade paperbacks, many of these stories from across the entire run are collected together out of publication order. I think one of the benefits of your issue-by-issue approach is that you're going to get to read this series with pacing that keeps those little bubbles of short stories as breathers in between the main plot line.
Yeah. So is that like what Preludes and Nocturnes is?
Well, Preludes and Nocturnes was the first story arc.
Oh, never mind.
Plus like issue 8 or whatever.
Okay. Sure.
So what I was thinking about reading this week's issue, the one we're about to discuss, is how Sandman is actually a lot like Mike Mignola's Hellboy in terms of structure.
Yes.
Right?
I had the same thought, yes.
Get one-offs and side quests, and then we will then return to a major arc, a longer story.
But that's what life is like, too.
That's what life is like, and now that I'm reading it in this fashion with the Hellboy comparison in my mind, like all my issues with what's the structure of this narrative have faded away completely.
Good.
And it makes me wonder if I had read Hellboy issue to issue the way that we're reading Sandman issue to issue and not trade to trade, would I have also had struggles and difficulties with its anthology-like structure?
Ooh, maybe.
Maybe. So thank you, Alexander.
Thank you so much
for all that info. Super helpful. This one comes from Chris Chaka. Great episode, y'all. I pressed play the second I finished reading issue 16, so the excitement carried straight over. In fact, I got so into it that when Brad wondered if desire had caused all the vortexes, I blurted out why this couldn't be true, as if I was on a Zoom and not listening to a podcast. I've had a few people tell me that. Brad, you're wrong.
I was also wrong. We share being wrong.
Speaking of Zoom, I had no idea you were drunk the other night, Lisa.
Okay, good.
Excellent sober feign. Yeah, Chaco was part of that DVD Blu-ray exchange.
Yep.
You guys really helped me out, too, because in my haste, I had completely skipped over 2 pages without realizing. In my read-through, I jumped from Unity breaking the Crystal Heart straight to Rose's 6 months later. I figured we were just supposed to infer what happened in the direct aftermath until Lisa started describing some unfamiliar artwork. I must admit, it made a lot more sense once I found the missed pages.
I've done that. I've done it. When
So
2 pages stick together and you go, ooh, look how creative the what is the word I'm looking for? The chronology of it.
Yeah, the sequentialing is really experimental. Yeah. Of course, I probably never would have started reading Sandman in the first place without you two, so it's doubly true. Yay. As far as the issue itself, I thought it was a wonderful wrap-up. I loved the dual interpretations of who lived in the dollhouse. Barbie's resolution definitely felt like a tease for an expanded tale. I hope we get more from her, either in Sandman or the larger DC world. You can't just throw a Mr. Tenbones out there and only give him a few panels of existence.
I second that, yes.
Anyway, Volume 3 delivers on Wednesday, so I'll be ready for the next Sunday or Monday or Tuesday.
Thank you for your generosity
or Wednesday
and patience.
Yeah, Chris, it's so interesting about like the Barbie thing because Lisa read the issue before me, and I glimpsed over her shoulder as she was reading, and I saw Calliope, and I thought, oh, that's Barbie. This is going to be a Barbie issue. And then, immediately I realized it wasn't Barbie. So I am obviously craving some Barbie or really some Mr. Tenbones. Final comment comes from Greg Lambert. Great episode, Brad and Lisa. I'm glad.
Thank
Oh,
you.
no. And then he says, Brad, I'm glad you remembered to breathe. I'll try to remember to do that this week. He's in reference to my Spider-Man No Way Home review.
Yeah.
A couple of things that have stuck in my mind. First, did the heart that Rose pulled out of her chest remind you of the Dreamstone ruby that John Dee had in issue 6 and 7?
Okay, yeah.
Now that you said that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many crystals going around. Like, when is a crystal, Nasipazum peep or whatever?
Yeah. Same color and cut, albeit a different
Terrible
shape.
French.
I wasn't going to comment on it because who am I to comment? The second thing may be a bit of a controversial comment. Okay, let's prepare ourselves. So let's see how the chips fall on this one.
We're no longer friends. No, I haven't even heard it.
I absolutely hate it when a story attempts to wrap up a storyline by doing a quick explanation of what happens to all the characters. So the part with Rose's journal wrapping up what happened to the others at Hal's boarding house felt forced to me. Perhaps there will be some future stories that come to play, but it reminded me of M. Night Shyamalan's movie Unbreakable, which I thought was really good right up until the very end, where it awkwardly wrapped up the storyline for everyone like they were disembarking from the Love Boat and telling Julie McCoy and Gopher what their plans are now that they found true love. I also am not a big fan of this, and I think that's what I was trying to say in last week's episode, because I feel like just hearing, well, this is what happened with Jed, and this is what happened with I'm missing the emotional connection to that situation.
I think in terms of Jed, it really wasn't sufficient.
But I think you helped me appreciate it a bit more, because really what that sequence was about was how out of it Rose was after her confrontation with Morpheus. And that scene being told that way through that journal form, her rambling through the lives of all the other people that she talked about, was really her reawakening and underscoring how distraught and de-juiced she was after her chat with Morpheus in the dreaming.
I can imagine, letting that kind of narrative knee-jerk thing become a pet peeve, because it does happen a lot, and it is an excuse to stop a story. Like, I can stop now because I'm just going to tell you what happened.
And it also prevents you from doing something differently in the future if you do pick those characters up, or it makes you look like you didn't have it all planned out. Because if you look at Unbreakable, all those things that are said at the end of that movie are negated by Split and Glass.
Right.
So,
but that being said, my little mantra about pet peeves is it's only a pet because you keep feeding and watering it. So let the peeve go.
Yeah, let the peeve go.
You
Good luck
don't
with
have
that.
you don't have to raise that peeve to become a full blown.
But I think Greg makes another excellent point here by saying, like, what made it worse for me was the paragraphs of typewriter font used to put so much information in a small space on the page. I'd rather have just not known what happened to them, save maybe a line or two on how everyone went their own ways and how sold the house to the Spider Women.
Yeah.
It's just one of my pet peeves.
Yeah, don't feed and water it.
So it may bother me more than it did other readers. I'd rather have had more on how Jed and Rose pushed through their reunification.
Yeah, I because that idea does fascinate me, the idea of reconnecting with an estranged, traumatized sibling. Like, I'm curious.
Yeah, I want that story, and I'll be a little sad if we don't get more of
Jed.
their story.
Yeah.
Rose and Jed together. But really, other than the first 1.5 pages of Rose's typewriter notes, the story wrapped up very well. I'm ready to dive into the next storyline. Merry Christmas, Lisa and Brad, and to all the other patrons.
Yay!
Good comments, everyone.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
I'm loving the comments more and more.
Same. All right, now let's get into the new issue, Sandman issue 17.
We're starting to lose count. I think Brad's asked me what issue number this is like 4 times, and I've had to look it up every single time.
The title is Calliope. The writer is Neil Gaiman. Kelly Jones, guest penciler. Malcolm Jones III, inker. Daniel Vazzo, the colorist on the digital. Robbie Bush, the colorist on the original single issue. Todd Klein, letterer. Tom Pyre, assistant editor. And I realized after we recorded, but we've had Tom Pyre in a Creator Cranny episode.
Oh, wow.
We've interviewed him about his comic
true.
Penultimate Man.
Yes.
Penultimate Man. That's hard to say. Which, if you haven't listened to that episode, go back in the Patreon feed, give that a listen. He's a very measured guy. The responses come slow and quietly, but they are informative. And Penultimate Man.
You nail it every time. I don't know why you're repeating it.
Penultimate Man.
Now that time you should mess it up.
I love that comic, and I think it's one of the unsung gems of 2021. I don't know if it's going to necessarily make our best of the year episode, but it could.
It could. Stay tuned.
So I wish I had known that when I was interviewing him, because I would have asked him about his time on Sandman. And I'm very curious, and I haven't researched this in any way, how long he remains the associate editor on Sandman. So, and then of course,
so is it not Penultimate Man, but Penultiman?
It's it's Penultiman.
Penultiman.
So it's not Penultimate Man, it's Penultiman.
Oh, I've been calling it in my head Penultimate Man. Probably because that's the way you say it.
It's basic, because I can't fucking say it right.
It's okay. We've dropped 2 F-bombs. I think that's all we can do.
Okay,
2.
all right.
We're out of F-bombs.
Good. And then the main editor, of course, is Karen Berger. And then the final credit is featuring characters created by Gaiman, Keith, and Dringenberg.
Yay.
Okay, so where do we begin?
Where I always want to begin, the very beginning, so I can then talk about every single page. So the book opens with a writer named Richard Maddock collecting from one of his fans a Bezoar. So had you heard of Bezoar before?
I think the answer is yes, because I watch a lot of SVU, Law and Order, right? And I believe this has come up in that show before. I did not remember the term Bezoar, but as they were describing it, I knew what it was. Yeah, so I had heard about it because there's a a medical history podcast called Sawbones, and they did a whole issue on Bezoar. And the presumed magical medical properties of these disgusting items. So a Bezoar is like when there is something in a stomach, it can be a human stomach or an animal stomach or whatever, that cannot be digested, and then things begin to kind of collect around it to create this kind of like gross, like mass. Mass. And they can be made of many things, but in the case of this Bezoar, it's a trichnobezoar, which is a bezoar made of human hair. So sometimes people who have like anxiety disorders, like actually when I taught at a school, we had a kid who had like trichophilia or whatever it's called, where she was constantly plucking out her hair. Yeah. And to the point where it was like visibly like, oh, something's going on with this kid. But he's collecting this trichnobezoar because he's going to exchange it to another author, Erasmus Fry, who has captured one of the 9 muses, Calliope. Yeah, and initially when I saw Fry, I felt like, is he somebody from like Vault of Horror or House of Mystery. But then I did like a quick Goog, and it looks like this is his first appearance in comic book form.
Okay, interesting. I wonder if he'll pop up other places while he is dead.
Got to. No, I think he's coming back.
You think he's coming back?
Death means nothing in Sandman.
So when Maddock. I'm getting Matt Murdock and Richard Maddock conflated in my brain because of similar names. But Rick exchanges the Bezoar, and Erasmus mentions that lots of people collect Bezoar because of these magical medical properties, particularly for curing poisonings.
Yeah.
So, like, if you are poisoned and you have a Bezoar, you can survive.
Did you catch a reference to a previous Sandman character?
Yes. So Queen Elizabeth I was given a gold-encrusted Bezoar by her magician friend John Dee.
Yeah.
From those first issues.
Dr. Destiny.
Yeah.
I also really appreciated, because when Maddock gets the Bezoar,
I say Bezoar just because when in doubt, say all of the vowel sounds.
Got it. So when Rick gets the stone from his doctor pal, the doctor only wants an autograph in exchange for this Bezoar. Mm-hmm. And the title of the book I thought was very funny.
Yeah.
Maddox's first novel, his debut book that gave him a little bit of fame, is called The Cabaret of Dr. Caligari, a play on The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, the famous expressionist German silent film. And just hearing the name The Cabaret of Dr. Caligari, I was like, I gotta read that book. I want someone out there to write some Sandman fan fiction, which is just the contents of The Cabaret of Dr. Caligari.
Get on that, you guys.
Get on it.
What I want to point out in this moment is like exchanging a Bezoar. So, like, as a doctor, this fan, what's his name? His name is Felix Garrison. As a doctor, he encounters Bezoars all of the time. Like, so he doesn't really think of this thing as a valuable thing, and then he exchanges it for this signed, autographed copy of the book, which to Maddock is not a precious thing because it's his book and he can write his name any damn time. And I think that there is this ongoing theme in this issue about, like, things are only precious because we make them precious. And we only feel a sense of scarcity because we do not have it in our hands.
It's a fiction.
Yeah, it's a metaphor. Like, it's just like an idea, you know? So, and so that theme goes on throughout this issue. And the reason that Maddock exchanges the Bezoar for Calliope is that he is having writer's block. So he, without the help of one of the muses that we know of, but without the help of one of the muses, he was able to write one novel, and that novel was a hit. But now he's feeling this sense of scarcity for his ideas because he's expected to have this another valuable, precious idea, and he cannot find it.
Yeah.
So because of the rareness and the preciousness of an idea, he does this heinous act.
And, you know, there have been many muse stories in fiction. Mm-hmm. I recently watched the Albert Brooks movie, The Muse, where Sharon Stone is the muse in the story. Did. And it's not the best Albert Brooks movie, but it's kind of interesting. But, you know, when the muse stories that I've encountered in the past, you know, the muse is nearby. Maybe they're being held prisoner. Maybe they're not. But this particular version of imprisonment and rape,
it's gnarly,
really upsetting,
really scary,
and the way that Kelly Jones actually illustrates it, I was shocked that we got a panel of the rape in progress.
It's not so graphic. I do want to do a trigger warning. Like, you know, there is rape in this story, and we're not going to describe it in detail. And I even though you say, like, I don't know.
Well, I mean, like, it's not
I guess
pornographic.
Yeah.
It's not pornographic, but
It is graphic.
it is very upsetting. And I was shocked at how clearly they depicted what was going on, and that there is no running away from, like, this is a rape act. This is an act of rape.
Yeah, and the way that Maddox allows himself to go through with this rape is that he convinces himself, like, Calliope isn't actually a woman.
He otherizes her.
He otherizes her, even though she is suffering. You know, she's suffering and she's being traumatized.
And that otherizing is something that we see continually in our life around us. And it's, you know,
it is the most toxic impulse.
Yeah, I mean, if you other someone, you can do anything. And I mean, I had difficulty getting past that page, honestly.
Yeah. So Calliope is passed from Erasmus Fry, who had promised her that he would free her before his death, and now he's reneging on that promise.
Yeah, and he's like, I'm a writer, and writers lie.
Writers lie. They just come up with stuff. And so he then passes her over to Maddox. Now, when she is in captivity, she calls on the three witches, who we've seen in previous issues.
So that was my question. Are those actually the witching hour witches?
I presume yes. Anytime you see three women, and they come in so many different forms, I think it's pretty safe to presume anytime we see three women.
And so they're not one of the 9 muses.
No.
Muses.
Mooses. They're not one of the 9 mooses.
I thought that too. I just wanted to get some clarification here.
Yeah, and I think that, like, we also hear her, you know, use other names for, like, Morpheus and stuff. I think that it's just goes back to the idea that there are these essential beings, and depending on your perception or where you're coming from, you see them in a certain way.
Okay.
So the names she uses for the muses are Melite, Neme, and Iode. We could have probably Googled that. But
probably could have.
That's probably.
And they do have the appearance of mother-daughter crone.
Yeah. So, and so she goes, like, is there any way that you guys can help free me? And they're like, sorry, this is like within the realm of, like, legal bondage and, like, whatever, muse territory. And they're like, well, you could, like, maybe a person who could free you is Onerios, which is the Greek name for the physical manifestation of dreams. So maybe you could call out to him, but he is also in captivity and inaccessible.
And not only that, it's revealed in that conversation that Calliope has had a relationship with Dream, and that they have sired a child together.
And the child was someone who had gone to Hades to retrieve his lost love.
Yeah.
So I think it's pretty safe to presume that Morpheus and Calliope's son is Orpheus.
Yeah, and I think at the end of this issue, the final page, they highlight that, they underline it, and they put an exclamation mark on it.
Yeah, so Orpheus is considered like one of the greatest all-time musicians, artists. The reason I know about Orpheus is because of Monteverdi's opera about Orpheus. So, like, Monteverdi's opera is considered like one of, like, an early example of opera. And there's been, of course, like, many operas written about the story of Orpheus and Eurydice. So, yeah. Interesting. So cool. Hope we want to come back to this tidbit.
I mean, that's a huge revelation, especially coming off of last week's issue and this idea of that Morpheus could actually sire children, and that was a real dangerous threat in last week's issue. But now we learn that no, it has happened, and maybe it's happened several times.
Yeah, we have no idea. So now then we get, like, kind of an ongoing, like, several flashbacks in chronological order of Rick Maddox's career building. So he writes a second, novel and a third novel, and he begins directing films and writing plays, and he's just having success after
There's
success.
an interview in that section where it looks like he is speaking to journalist / author Kim Newman, the writer of Anno Dracula. You can recognize him by those giant mutton chops that he's got on there. And I love this idea where they compare him to somebody great. I can't even remember who they compare him to author-wise. And then they compare him and then on the lesser spectrum, maybe Clive Barker.
Yeah.
And I was like, ouch.
That's some cold shit.
But as I was building to that moment with Kim Newman, I was thinking, he's kind of taking a Clive Barker role where he was doing, short stories, plays, novels, and then he made the jump to film with Hellraiser and Nightbreed. And then Clive Barker kind of dwindled after Lord of Illusions.
Ooh, interesting.
Although, he's written some books of late that I really, really liked. The Scarlet Gospels is incredible. Anyway, so I thought it was interesting that Neil Gaiman gives a playful jab to Clive Barker, a fellow Brit genre author, from the mouth of Kim Newman, who is a famous journalist with a focus on genre fiction. So.
Yeah, that the Kim Newman reference I did not catch. So.
Yeah, I wouldn't imagine you to.
Okay, so...
And I could be wrong. It could just be a coincidence that guy looks like Kim Newman.
So then it comes all the way up to March 1990, and Calliope is still, still captive, but then Morpheus comes to visit her. And I wonder if that is of his own impulse.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume so. Well, no. The assumption I had was that he was contacted at some point after his imprisonment by the three witches.
Oh, okay. But so when Rick Murdoch comes home... Oh, and Rick Murdoch finds out from that journalist you were just... Kim Newman. He finds out that Erasmus... died of poisoning himself.
Right.
Which he had the bezoar. So I'm guessing that, when you have this precious item, you want to see if it works. And in this case... he ate it. The bezoar did not work.
Yeah.
Which I think is interesting in this world of magic and mystery and the items having power, that this particular item did not have power.
Right. And maybe Bezors in general don't have power.
Yeah, we have no idea.
Yeah,
we have no idea if they work or not. All we know is that some people think that they are precious and they collect them. And
and I guess we don't have confirmation either of who put Morpheus in Maddox's home, if it was his own free will. Looking at it now, you could read it either way. Maybe this was just on his to-do list.
I mean, I do feel like somewhere... So the exchange between Morpheus and Calliope, he says... please, if you... I feel like at some point, I don't remember where, Calliope mentions that Morpheus has been changed. Morpheus is different than when they were together.
And Morpheus also says that he is different than he was before. He specifically tells her that I've gone through a lot lately.
So, to me, I feel like he kind of had some kind of guilt or something, and then checked in on her. Through
maybe,
channels.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, because you could easily also say that the witches came to him and said, yo, this is going down. And in the past, he would say, too bad for her.
Yeah.
But now, because of the events that we've recently read, he's willing to help. Or this, again, could be on his checklist.
So...
it doesn't really matter.
It doesn't really matter. So... when Richard Maddox comes home from that interview and finding out that Erasmus is dead, he finds Morpheus in his home, and he thinks that he's some kind of intruder. But then they have a little exchange, and Morpheus is like, you're going to, I'm not going to call the police or anything. I'm not going to call any earthly agency, but you have a woman who is captive, and you are going to set her free. So he says, you have held her captive for more than 60 years, stripped of all possessions, demeaned, abused, and hurt. I know how she must feel. and now you will not free her because you need ideas?
Yeah.
Like ideas?
That's your problem?
And so he's like, you want ideas? I'm going to give you ideas. And so then he experiences this flood of inspiration that is just out of control, and he becomes a crazy person.
And he's like, he has to get it down on paper, but he has no paper around him. So he is like cracking his fingernails and scrawling the tales onto brick wall. And it is such a grotesque image.
It is gnarly.
And it destroys his fingers.
It's so gross. But at first he blames
the muse.
Blames Calliope and she goes like, I didn't do it. Neros.
I don't know.
I don't know how to pronounce it. Said that did it, and he was called the Shaper of Forms, and he said he once was my lover, and he was the father of my son, and he replies in very small text, I didn't know you'd ever had a son. So I think that that's a moment where she is humanized in his eyes, and I think that's a really powerful moment. So then we have the moment of him like going completely nuts, and he reconnects with the guy from the beginning who gave him the bezoar, the doctor. I'm looking up his name. The
fanboy.
Yeah, Felix Garrison, who goes to take him into the hospital. But he says before he can be taken to the hospital, Garrison has to go to his home and free her. But when Garrison goes, she's already gone.
Yeah, and a copy of his first book of Rasmus's first book is waiting for him, and he picks that up.
Yeah, and so
the impression that I get is that book that Erasmus wanted back in print was probably his first book, the one that has been forgotten, the one that had no influence of the muse. And I would imagine that's going to be the same fate for Madoc as well.
Yeah.
Because you get to an old age and you realize like those books that you created
under the influence of Calliope
are not yours.
Yeah.
And so Erasmus dies desperately wanting his one true book back in publication, but nobody cares about that.
Oh, I didn't think about that, but that's beautiful. So then we have we have 2 pages of just like Morpheus and Calliope. Oh, and this is where she says it. She says like, you have changed, O Neros. In the old days, you would have left me to rot forever without turning a hair. Do you still have hate for me, for what I did? And he says, no, I no longer hate you, Calliope. I have learned much in recent times, and no matter, I do not hate you, child. And she says, I think you should release the mortal now. He has set me free.
Yeah.
So if that is what you wish, it is done.
It's similar. Her response there is similar to the feeling that Morpheus had for Dr. D at the end of the first arc.
Yeah,
and I think that's interesting.
I think it shows like empathy for a weaker mortal because, he didn't completely understand what he was doing, and he was working out of a desperation that I think maybe she has a familiarity with.
But that's a level of empathy and forgiveness that is is unreal.
It's unreal,
I can't imagine responding the way that she does, but the fact that she does respond the way that she does just, I'm using the word underscores a lot, but it reveals just what a different plane of existence that these god beings are living on.
Yeah, she has a deep well of forgiveness.
And her idea of time and life is way different than a mortal's.
Yeah. So then we have a page of Garrison and Madoc. Like, Garrison is coming to check in on him, and he says, I don't know... this is what Madoc is saying. I don't know anymore. I keep trying to think about what she said. The Shaper of Forms. It seems like it should mean something. And Garrison says, there was no one in the room, just a book. And
And the way that it's a 9-panel page, and the way that it is broken up is that every other panel is an image of Morpheus. So as Matic is speaking, we then cut to a panel of Morpheus, and Morpheus is being pulled away, and he is fading from existence until his final panel is a blank white space.
And so, like, from the dialogue, you get the sense that Matic is losing his memory of what has happened to him, and he is slowly forgetting Morpheus and Calliope. And the final pages says, "It's gone. I've got no idea anymore. No idea at all."
And also in that panel, in the middle panel of the page, that's like the target panel. That's the bullseye panel. That's the panel that you deliver your hardest hits. That's where you get Matic saying, it was like Morpheus or Orpheus. And so now there's like no doubt, okay, Orpheus is the child of Morpheus.
And Calliope. So, what did you think about this issue? Like,
I mean, it's a
thoughts?
freaking fantastic issue. It may be my favorite issue. I need to go back and look at all the other issues. I think what it does is it shows Morpheus at a different place. We see that he has been radically changed by his experiences over the last 2 arcs. It sets up so much content. Like, the last arc felt like it was throwing stories left and right. And I've been listening to the depositions between Todd McFarlane and Neil Gaiman. And Gaiman on the stand is talking about how when he wrote Spawn #9, the Angela issue, what he saw as his job was to establish a story that McFarlane and other writers and artists could take and go in 1,000 different directions. And in reading this last arc and reading this issue, what I'm sensing is Neil Gaiman setting up a massive canvas to be filled in later.
I also think there is something about the metaphor of the Bezoar and the idea, like, the preciousness of ideas that I think relates back to the deposition, where it's just like, well, my idea of Angela only has power because because we say that Angela, my idea of Angela, is a thing of value.
Right.
And because it has been made a thing of value, then that value should go to me because I am the creator of that idea.
Yeah.
I'm the source of that idea.
Well, we should share the I deserve a piece of the pie. Right now, my co-creator, Todd McFarlane, is getting the majority of the pie. And we had agreed on it being like an equal thing. That I was a co-creator.
And like, I don't know, like Brad has been telling me about the deposition.
Oh, I've been listening to it via cartoonist kayfabe through the voices of Jim Rugg and Ed Piskor, and then going into Todd McFarlane versus the World, the book by Best, which, if you're into all this kind of stuff, very, very readable.
But I get the impression that for Neil Gaiman in particular, it wasn't a matter of like money or credit in that way, but it was a matter of principle.
Yes.
Like, the principle that Image was set up with is that the characters are owned by the creators, and now Todd McFarlane is not living up to that principle, and therefore I will bring my wrath down upon you.
Well, right, yeah. I think it's super complicated, but I think I agree with you on that. And I think now you look at what's going on with the Image Workers Union and Image Comics, and we're having to confront the supposed ideology of Image Comics' creation and the reality of what is there. So I don't know. All that, I love all of that stuff.
It's all very fascinating.
But getting back to this issue, I think it's an exceptional one. I love Kelly Jones's art in this. When we had the Chris Bachalo issue, I was like, well, this is my favorite version of Morpheus. Mike Dringenberg and Jones together, that is probably the ideal image in my head of what Morpheus should look like. But this Kelly Jones version, especially in the last couple of pages of this issue, this might be my favorite version of Morpheus.
I love that. I also think that there is something there about, like, ideas are like kind of like Bezoar, where they're kind of like an undigested, mentally undigested piece of something that, you know, becomes a form in our minds.
Yeah.
And the only reason we consider our ideas precious and rare is that we treat them like they're precious and rare. But to Morpheus, like, they are not at all rare or precious. They're valueless if you can't do anything with them. It's like, it doesn't matter the volume of ideas you have if you cannot do anything of value with it.
Well, Madoc says early on in the issue when he's discussing his writer's block, and what's stopping him is this idea of creating new characters, new stories that have not been told before.
That are good, that are as good or better than his previous book.
And what Morpheus is saying is like, you know, they're all out there, man. The block is self-inflicted.
Right.
You know, you're punishing yourself. You're unable to create things. Like this idea that you can't create new ideas is absurd. And even if that were true, it doesn't matter. It's what you do with the old ideas.
Yeah, you were having ideas and you were dismissing them.
Yeah.
And you were saying that those ideas were not precious and beautiful or valuable.
Yeah. And so, like, this feels also like a very meta comic book. You know, it feels like Neil Gaiman is exploring the idea of creation. In fact, all of Sandman, if you look at it so far, and I'm guessing will continue to be, feels like a meta commentary on narrative and creation.
Yeah. Though, like, in the back of my mind, I've been thinking about, like, just personally in my life, I've been thinking about how much kind of ownership can we put personally on our ideas. And, like, you know, because...
We were talking about this last night.
Yeah, like, where I go, like, I keep on wavering between, like, the enfranchisement and disenfranchisement of our ownership of our ideas.
Well, I mean, without spoiling what we were talking about, because that was a personal thing that we were talking about.
Yeah.
But this idea that sometimes happens is like, well, why didn't so-and-so do this? If I was in so-and-so's position, I would do this. And the truth is like, we think that we make the decisions based on our very smart brain. Mm-hmm. But the reality is so many choices. Like, if we're going to make a choice in life, if like I decide, you know what, let's start a Patreon. Mm-hmm. I think I'm making that choice to start a Patreon. But the reality is it took a nearly infinite well of choices to bring me to that singular choice.
And like, you can't, so the ideas that we have today are the direct result of every idea that we've ever had in the past, and that we can't really hold our present selves responsible for the decisions that we made in that past. So like, because we're not that person anymore.
And
so,
if you're looking at other people and going and judging them and their poor decisions, those are decisions that you would probably make given the decisions that they had already made.
Yeah, if you had made every other decision that led up to that decision, you'd be making the same decision. Yeah. But that, like, I don't want to, like, disenfranchise myself from my own sense of free will, but I also want to be able to look at other people with, like, complete compassion and think to myself, like, well, that person is making that poor decision or that decision that I disagree with, or they are holding precious an idea I think that is bad. Like, I can't really hold the person in the present responsible for all of the decisions that do you hear what I'm trying to say?
I agree with you. I agree with you totally. And it goes back to what we were talking about yesterday and this idea of going into 2022, wanting to embrace kindness, and the ability to embrace kindness requires proactive empathy. Mm-hmm. And so when you encounter something that makes you mad, you have to stop yourself and put yourself in that thing that's making you mad, which is probably a person.
Right.
And seeing the world from their point of view, and not necessarily going like forgiving them or whatever, but just trying to understand, why is this person making this stupid thing that's making me so mad?
Well, like, I think that like the free will element is like when you are in the present, you should be asking yourself like, what is the idea that I'm holding precious? And does it make me feel good? Like, so if I make in the present tense, like the idea of like, man, this person is just making the worst decision and they're so hateful and evil. And so that's the idea that I'm holding precious in that moment. And I go like, well, this, like, does that make me feel empowered? Does it make me feel good and kind and generous? No, it's not.
Right.
And so you have to release that thing. Like that thing that's making that thing precious in the moment. But then when somebody else is holding an idea precious, where they go like, where they are going like people are bad and evil and making bad and evil decisions, like I don't have to attack the idea that they're holding precious because that idea is not precious to me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like when you see someone acting like, you know, who's like, what's that spindly guy? What's that spindly guy who's in Lord of the Rings?
Gollum.
So when you see someone,
the spindly guy.
So when you see someone like Gollum holding something precious that is like like what you see as a disgusting mass of hair, you just have to go let it go.
Well,
I guess.
So
I don't know.
well, I like it's. I'm very curious to see.
I'm mixing metaphors.
I would like to know how our patrons think about the conversation that we're currently having, if it makes any kind of sense to you, because we are not using specific examples because we're talking around specific
Some
examples.
family issues.
So here's what I think. The Gollum's ideas are pretty good. Why did we respond so well to Did You Hear What Eddie Gein Done? The Eric Powell, Harold Schechter comic book. Because that book puts you in the head of Ed Gein, a figure that you could look at as a true monster, that we could otherize and treat him like a demon, as a foul beast, because he did commit
the most
heinous of human acts, right? But what that book did was it put you in his life to a degree. Obviously, it's still filtered, it's still imaginary, it's still a fiction, but it put you behind the lens of his point of view and showed you as a human. It de-otherized Ed Gein.
And it disenfranchised him over his ownership of his ideas. Like, you know, every idea that was put in front of him, like he was put, some terrible ideas were put in front of them, and he held those ideas precious, and it made him a terrible person. Right. You know? And so you look at that person with empathy and go like, well, that person's not really responsible. Well, they're responsible for their acts, but at the same time, I can have compassion for them.
There were things that happened that put him on the course to do what he did. And some of those things were, you know, exterior, the family he was in, the abuse he was experiencing. Some of those things were internal. His brain, right? Like, we like to think that we are free from our brain, but there are cracks and fissures in our brain that we have no control on, our mental state.
So here's my conflict. My conflict is I have compassion for Eddie Gein because he was not fully in charge of the outcome of his life. Of the outcome of his life. Now, can I then too disenfranchise myself of pride of my own ideas, where I go like, look at the beautiful ideas I'm putting out in the world. These are my ideas. I'm a precious and beautiful person.
I think it's doing those things and being aware of you are a product of your decisions and the decisions that have been imposed upon you. And that's the exciting thing of life.
Well, yeah. Well, like, I think that's just the chiaroscuro of it all, where it's just like we are all balancing two opposing things, the darkness and the lightness. And it's in that kind of balancing act that we live our lives, you know? Yeah. And sometimes we'll feel more of the scuro and sometimes we'll feel more of the chiaro.
And again, I just want to reiterate that this is not about me forgiving Ed Gein or whatever stand-in for Ed Gein. Lock him up, Yeah. But for me personally, going into 2022, after several years, not just the pandemic years, but several years of feeling awful when I'm having conversations with people who do not have my point of view. And, I could sever myself from those points of view, but that also doesn't help me.
Not
personally, for Brad Gullickson.
Yeah.
I'm not experiencing what other people are experiencing. But for Brad Gullickson, I've made a choice not to sever myself from certain people who share radically different points of view from me. And for me to have a better year, right now, and this could change, I'm choosing to practice proactive empathy.
Yeah. And that idea of going like, I'm fixating on something that's actively making me feel terrible.
Yeah. And
that isn't isn't something that needs to be addressed right now.
Right.
So I go like, why am I clinging to this ball of hair and calling it precious? Just, it's gross, makes you feel bad, let it go.
Yeah. And again, this is Brad and Lisa's experience.
Yeah. We probably will
we'll walk
negate
back
ourselves.
on it. Who knows? And we're not telling you this is how you should behave. This is
just
this is what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
And then, okay. Anything else about Sandman issue 17? 17? Is it 17?
Yeah, it is 17.
Okay.
It's still 17.
All right, thank you.
Started this episode being 17, ending the episode being 17.
Yeah, but we liked it.
We really, really loved it.
Liked the art quite a bit. I hope we see Kelly Jones again. I'm excited by the next issue.
Yes. So I remember the next issue. So
you mean from your past 14 years ago read of Sandman?
So it said that this issue ends with a little like line at the bottom of the page that says next, and then you see a set of cat eyes, a dream of 1,000 cats. And so this is the next issue is an issue with a ton of cats.
All right. A ton of cats. I'm excited.
So many cats.
I like cats. And next issue, we
really
will
cool
be
art.
reading with a physical copy. We have the single issue in front of us. We read this one digitally, so I always get excited. Actually, the next 2 issues, we're going to have the physical copies. And we'll discuss the publishatorials within and the letters pages and all that stuff.
Love that.
That is going to do it for us.
Please leave comments on Patreon. We love them.
Love the comments. Please leave them. We are going to finish up our notes on the Second Life of Dr. Mirage.
That's
part
my plan
2.
for today.
We are going to record that episode this week. It'll be our final episode of 2021. Next year, we're going to kick things off with our next Sandman Patreon episode, issue 18. And then we are going to have an epic best of 2021 episode. And we may have some guests.
Yeah, we're doing something a little bit different this year. I'm really excited.
Yeah. We're asking a few cool people, some friends of the pod, to contribute their favorite comics of 2021. And we're going to sprinkle those clips throughout our own discussion.
Brad has a lot of editing ahead of him.
I actually don't think it's going to be that bad. It certainly won't be as difficult as our Fantastic Four episode.
Yeah. That was a lot of work.
I'm very excited about it because, again, we've got some pretty cool friends who are joining the podcast.
Thank you.
All right, that's going to do it for us. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out. Until next time, keep your love tank full.
And your psychic rapport open.
Oh, hey, it's Brad in the present again. You can't get rid of me that easily. I just wanted to hop in here and say that those episodes that we're promoting at the end of our Sandman conversation, the best of 2021 episodes with all those rad comic podcasters and journalists, those are done and available, and I've included links in the show notes. They were absolute beasts to edit, but because of that, it's some of my favorite content, and I'm super proud of the work that we put into those episodes. So if you have not given them a gander, now is the time. Again, links in the show notes. Okay, I'm finally getting out of here. Thanks for listening, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know at MouthDork on Twitter, at CBCC Podcast on Twitter. Let's talk. And don't forget, our Angela and Sarah episodes are coming real soon. I promise. Thanks, everyone. Take care. Have a wonderful day, a wonderful week, a wonderful night, a wonderful whatever.